Hello, my name is Angela Hooper-Menifield of Menifield and Associates, and today is Friday, May 15th, 2020. And so as the week is starting to end, I thought it would be really important for us to kind of come back and talk about some tools and resources that can help supervisors in their day-to-day journey. And so part of the reason why I picked this topic today, and today's topic is about how to have difficult conversations with your team members or employees, and what are some of those tips that we can use, is because I have had quite a few conversations this past week with people who are really struggling. Now, it's difficult to have, and can be challenging to have a difficult conversation with a person in normal work environments, right? And what do I mean by normal? Normal is the environment that we just came from, where we typically see each other regularly. We work in the same location. And so we're trying to discuss some things that need to be addressed. When you compound that with distance working, virtual meetings, not even having the capacity in some of these situations to even see eye to eye, because remember, not all our employees have the same capacity to communicate. It's making this even more challenging. And so when we think about difficult conversations, they're really necessary. You know, in a role that I have, even in an organization that I'm a part of, I often find I'm having to have what I would consider difficult conversations. Now, we could go left a little bit and talk about what makes a conversation difficult, because some of the difficulty is here, right? It's in our mind, as in we decided that this was going to be a difficult conversation. And as a result of that, there's some energy that shows up here, right? It makes us feel awkward. We're less relaxed. And we just bring, again, to the conversation a different energy. So the first thing I want to do and offer as a tip is approach the conversation not as difficult, but tell yourself that this is a necessary conversation. You see, when something is necessary, it helps us adopt to our thinking that this is something that must be done. It's not negotiable. It really doesn't matter who else is impacted by it, because this is necessary. Like, it's necessary for us to eat food to survive. It's necessary for us to go to work if we want to be paid. It's necessary for us to pay our taxes. I mean, the list goes on and on. So even while we may not like doing it, we muster up the energy and do it because we view this as necessary. So my first tip is to not view your conversation as difficult, but view it as necessary. The second tip I want to give you is approach it as with the mindset of helping. So when we have to have conversations that may be a little bit more challenging, and some of the reasons, again, why we feel that way is because we're concerned about how the person may receive what we have to say. Tell yourself that, one, you're doing it because you care about the person and you want to help them. And if that's not the case, I would argue or pose as a question that maybe this is not a conversation for you to have. So in other words, if you're saying something to a person that they may not react positively to, but your underlining motivation is not to help them, it's not to serve them, then why are you having the conversation? Is there someone else better on the team that can have this conversation? Because when we discipline, when we have difficult, quote unquote, conversations, necessary conversations, we should always be doing it with the best interest of the person we speak to at heart. And so to give you an illustration of that, I would talk about even as parents, right? You know, for those of us who have kids or who've, helped raise kids, even if they weren't ours biologically, there have been times when we've had to say things to those children that they didn't want to hear. Maybe tell them no, why they couldn't go off with a friend or run across the street before looking both ways, right? But we justified, even if we had to tap their legs or their hand, put them in a corner or whatever that thing was, we knew in our heart that we cared about them and we were saying these things to them, even if it made them cry or sad, because we cared about them. And so you don't have to feel guilty. And so I say that to say, again, if we're talking to our team members, we should care about them. Now, I could do a whole conversation on why people who do not love and care for people should not be supervisors. And perhaps I'll do that. And today's not that day. But ask yourself, what is my motive for having this conversation? Who is served by me having this conversation? And how can I say what I need to say in a way that serves them and adds value to them? Now, I used a couple of phrases there. I said serves them and adds value. Whenever you say something to a person that makes them better off having heard it, gives them an opportunity to correct a wrong, to up-level performance, fix a mistake, whatever the case may be, you have served them and you've added value to them. We are remiss and neglectful as supervisors if we don't talk to our employees and tell them when they mess up. A common thing that people do when there's something to be discussed is they sweep it under the carpet, right? We tell ourselves sometimes, well, this is not really important, so I'll let it ride. And trust me, I say that to myself too. The difference is after, maybe a day or so, I usually say, no, I need to say something. And here's why. What I know about myself is if I don't say it now and it continues to get worse, when I do say it, it won't be as professional and as heartfelt or sincere, because the more something that we don't like continues to happen, we get irritated and we become bothered. And so we tend to blurt out or not think through what we say and how we say it. And then that's when something bad happens. It's real easy to tell ourselves to just let it ride, again, sweep it under the carpet. But I promise you, you're not saving yourself nor the person by doing that. You're actually hurting them, because now they have to go another day or another week or however long it takes you to finally say that thing in the wrong or messing up or offending somebody without even being told. Now, my attitude is to always assign noble intent, right? So I always assume, or I try to, I'm not perfect, that when a person does something, their intent was not to offend me, even if I'm offended. And so by not telling them, I also then set them up for an opportunity to offend me again. And that's not really who I want to be. So how to have the conversation? Well, first we need to focus on facts, right? Focus on the behaviors or the actions that we need to discuss, or the ramifications. Now, again, in this scenario, of course, I'm speaking about something that someone's done. There could be times when the difficult conversation is you telling someone they didn't get selected for a job or a vacancy. You telling someone they won't get the promotion or the bonus they asked for. It could be you even saying to them that unfortunately, due to the situation as it stands with lack of work, we're going to have to let you go. So there's tons of difficult conversations. But here's what I know. When you operate in empathy and compassion and value the person you're speaking with, you set yourself up to come across as a person that people want to work for, people want to be led by, and people would be honored to be on your team. Now, how do I know this? Through my years of supervision, let's just say that hundreds of people have been let go. And the times that I personally had to deliver the message, because it could have been a different supervisor on my shift, I can tell you unequivocally, My core objective was to leave the person whole, leave them whole. I didn't have to degrade them, put them down, and talk about them in a negative way, right? Because sometimes what supervisors do is we begin to bring up all the things the person didn't do right to justify our decision. Well, number one, if we've been managing them well, why are we doing it that way? They already know the things that they haven't done right because we've been giving them appraisals and updates. So now that the final decision has been made, for instance, if it's to let them go, it really shouldn't even be a surprise. Now, financial situations and things like that, that's totally different. I'm not speaking about that. But in general, people should never be blindsided by the decisions that you make as a supervisor pertaining to them. And so while those conversations may be challenging and just regretful because you don't want to have to do that, that part of it should not be what's the challenge. It should be more of, I just hate that I have to let you go because otherwise you're a great employee, right? But in the conversations I'm referring to, like, again, if they've done something, the performance has been subpar, the behavior has not been in compliance with the rules, policies, and procedures, then you have to talk to them. Here's what happens when we don't have the conversations. Again, people keep up the behavior, but the second thing that happens is when we do get fed up and we want to put our foot down and have a more challenging conversation, we've actually lost some leverage. We've lost leverage with the rest of the team because they've watched us let this slide. And we've also lost some leverage with the person we're speaking to, because guess what? They're going to say, well, I didn't know this was wrong. And if you knew this was wrong, why didn't you say anything before? And if we try to take more severe action, it may not be upheld, because our past precedents, our past behavior, the way we manage these decisions suggests that this was acceptable because we didn't say anything. So you need to address it. Now, there's all kind of techniques out there. You know, there's the sandwich method, right? I'm sure some of you have heard those. And basically the premise is something good on top, that's the top piece of bread, something good on the bottom piece of bread, and in the middle is the critique or the area where growth is needed. And all these do work, provided, again, you've demonstrated care and compassion. Because if what you say on the top part of the sandwich is good, but the way you handle the critique isn't, it doesn't matter how you put that last piece of bread on that critique. They didn't even hear anything else you said. So going back to my earlier point, showing care, compassion, empathy with people goes a long way. So again, we don't want to hold you too long because we want to honor the LinkedIn requirements for videos. But what I will also say is be brief. Don't just talk on and on, right? And some people do that. I mean, they'll tell you everything that you've done since the first day you started working there, a story about another employee that has nothing to do with you. It's terrible. What you're displaying when you do stuff like that is that you're uncomfortable and you're awkward and you're potentially not even resolute in the decision that you've made. And so again, we want to stick to the facts. We want to treat people, use the simple formula, state the facts that you observe, not the ones you made up in your mind. State the impacts of the behavior on the work or other employees, and then let them know how you want this to be resolved. You also want to keep a culture of feedback within your organization. So you want people to be used to hearing what it is you have to say. But part of that is because you listen to what they have to say. We have to be human. We have to be human. And again, that's treating people like we care about them and making them whole. We also have to establish trust, because here's what we know. There are some people that can tell us anything, and then there are some people that can't tell us anything, right? So what do I mean by that? There are some people who can say, hey, Angela, I felt like when you did your last presentation that it came off a little strong or maybe pointed and accusatory. And I would say, oh, wow, thank you for letting me know. I really appreciate that. Then on the flip side, somebody else could say something to me and even say less and just says, well, I just felt like you could have done better. And because I don't trust them or have a relationship with them, we don't have a connection, right? And we talked about how to connect in a previous video. But what would happen is I wouldn't receive that. And so we want to build trust whenever it's required of us to have a difficult conversation with people. And so in light of, we just hit the little past the 15 minutes. Again, I want to honor the LinkedIn policies and procedures and timelines for videos. And so we can definitely come back and talk about this some more because I do have some more tips. But on this Friday evening, as I leave you, if you're ending your work day, about to go home, or perhaps because I've seen this happen too, you were about to say something negative to somebody, right? Because guess what supervisors do sometimes? We wait to the end of the day on Friday because we're so uncomfortable having these conversations that we save them till the end of the day because that means either the person is about to go home or us. Now, there could be some reasons why we do that, right? Because maybe we are really concerned and that's a security issue that we might have to talk about in another video. I actually prefer not to wait to the end of the day because I want to give the person an opportunity to be around me more during that day so that they can see that I was able to separate the being from the behavior. So the behavior or lack thereof may be what I had a problem with, but I still respect and honor you as a being, a person. And so by waiting to the end of the day to have a conversation with someone, basically now I've left them 2.5 days to come up with their own conclusions and interpretations of the impact of how that this will have on our relationship, right? So again, this is a way, not the way. None of these tips are, I would say, like, you must do it. I'm telling you what's worked for me. And I'm telling you what's worked for the hundreds of supervisors that I've worked with through the years, right? So I have just found it more beneficial to have the conversation maybe before lunch, because people may need some time alone, but I don't want to leave them 2.5 days to see how they're doing. So before lunch, then they get to go to lunch, get out of the office, call whoever they need to call to vent, right? Because people complain about us as supervisors, right? But then they have to come back and then I can take the lead and be proactive and demonstrate you're still valuable here, you matter, and we care about you. So that's just the way I do it. And so I leave you with the reminder, and this is one of my favorite quotes by John Maxwell that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so we can be telling them or giving them the feedback because we know the rules, we know the regulations, we know what they did was not correct. But at the end of the day, if they don't know we care about them in that discipline, I'm just going to be honest with you, it feels like abuse. That's exactly how it feels, right? Think about it, even with kids. You can spank a kid lovingly, or you can spank that same kid and it's child abuse. And as people in the workplace, we have hearts, we care, we have feelings. And so people want to know that you care about them. So I'll leave you with a personal story because I think they always kind of bring everything full circle. So one time I was managing a group, a team. It was a new team for me because their predecessor had retired. And instead of replacing the person immediately, I was their supervisor's supervisor. For this period of time, they were reporting to me. Well, one of the people on the team had a habit, and she was highly social, of maybe being away from her desk excessively. Her previous supervisor would track her down, like find her at other people's desk and say little phrases like, I'm having to crack that whip on you and stuff like that, which was totally inappropriate. But this has been a while. We've come a long way in the workforce. But she would always leave these conversations not feeling her best. Now, this was even pre my knowledge of DISC and, I do behavioral assessments and stuff like that. But one thing was clear to me, this person was just social. I used to jokingly call them a social butterfly, right? And so anyway, long story short, when I became a supervisor, this issue did not go away. And it was also an attendance issue, maybe a few minutes late here and there. And they just always felt that they had been singled out. And so when I became the supervisor, one of the things that I did was explain to everybody the expectations that I had, how I managed, how I wanted them to honor some of the rules and regulations and demonstrate that. And so one day, same thing, away from their desk, and I didn't go get them, but when they came back, I kind of explained to them how I didn't want to squash their need to be social, but to explain to them what was important to me in deliverables and getting your work done, because I've never been a micromanager. And I'll never forget what this person told me. And they said, thank you. They said, because even though you're getting on me, I don't feel like you're picking on me. And so I understand the logic behind what you said, you know, and I know that I can do what you need me to do. And I'm paraphrasing. And this person actually went on to do this. And so my point is the predecessor, or the person before me, made them feel, whether it was their choice to feel that way or not, but singled out. Because oftentimes the person that is more social or, you know, steps away from their desk is the one we catch. But think about it. You're making an assumption if you believe the one that's sitting at their desk is not doing anything personal. You don't know. You know, I tell people all the time when they say that employees may work from home and not do work. And my question always is, so do you think this person has been a great employee all the years they work for the organization, and then on the day you let them work from home, they make a conscious decision to steal time? Is that what you want me to believe? Because a person who, again, and I've said this before, would go home and falsify a timesheet has falsified timesheets in your face. You just didn't know it, right? So I say that to say, by me talking to the whole team and having this discussion, the person walked away from it with not the opinion that Angela was picking on them or singling them out. Angela was telling everybody what the expectations were. And I would never try to embarrass them in front of other people, even if they were wrong. The only time I feel like you call somebody out in the middle of the act, if the act is unsafe, dangerous, and could cause harm. But talking is not a deed that requires being yelled at in front of other people. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. So hopefully you have learned something today, or I've just, you know, put a different perspective on some things and helped you to figure out, you know, that it's not as hard as we make it to have quote unquote difficult conversations. And again, if you just approach it with a different energy, that I'm not having a difficult conversation, I'm having a necessary conversation. And my why behind this conversation is because you matter. So thank you very much. Again, my name is Angela Hooper-Menifield of Menifield & Associates. And we hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.